Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Daniel Todd, welcome to the conversation today.
Hey, John. I'm glad to be here and excited to talk with you.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining me from Arizona. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about fostering thriving company cultures. This is a topic that I love. I could talk all day on this topic, both from the positive and the negative. Like, we've all been there in organizations where they have had unhealthy cultures, where it's disengaging, disempowering, demotivating, but hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to be in a really good place as well, with a good team, with a good boss, with a thriving dynamic within the organization. And it's such a stark difference when we have that experience. And so then it begs the question, well, why are some places so crappy and other places are so good? Sometimes organizations and leaders, especially when they're in the startup phase and they're small, sometimes it can happen by accident, just because of the personalities and the people involved in the organization. But especially as an organization grows and becomes more complex, has more employees, really the only way to get at a thriving company culture is through intentional strategy and setting it up that way, right? You will have a culture. It's just a matter of whether or not it's going to be a good one, a positive one, a healthy one, or if it's going to be on the negative side. So we're going to unpack that together today and have a really fun conversation. As we get started, I wanted to share Daniel's bio with everybody. Daniel Todd is the CEO and founder of Influence Mobile, a company that builds products that reward people every day for everyday activities so everyone can live a rewarded life. With over 25 years of experience in the online media and advertising industry, he has a proven track record of creating and scaling innovative and successful businesses, as well as cultivating a culture of excellence and happiness among his team members. Wonderful background, Daniel. Anything you would like to add by way of your personal context or background before we dive on in?
No, I'm excited to get your take. I saw some of your recent stuff on the challenges of remote work, and that's really where I've been spending my time is, we're a fully remote company. And so I want to, there's big benefits, I think, to being fully remote, and there's some trade-offs. And
sure, yeah.
I'm doing a lot to try to figure out how to mitigate those trade-offs. And so I'm excited to hear what ideas you've picked up in your extensive research in this area.
Yeah, well, excellent. Let's start there. You mentioned how you are part of a distributed organization. You have a remote team.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 110,000 bonus miles for a limited time through July 16th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends 7/16/25.
Obviously, we have all different modes and styles of organizational setups and design and work design. You have the traditional face-to-face office. You have hybrid environments. You have remote environments. I think more and more organizations are, trying to find somewhere in the middle, to foster, these distributed team opportunities and to leverage the benefits. Like you said, there's a ton of benefits of having distributed remote teams, but there's also benefits of having people in person. So, finding some sort of a healthy hybrid approach, I think is becoming more and more common. But you have everything across the spectrum, right? Your organization is a remote first organization. Maybe start by telling us a little bit about your company, a little bit about where you've been, and where you've come in the last couple of years. And like you said, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing in having a thriving company culture within a remote environment?
Sure. Yeah. So we've been in business 12 years, and for a majority of that, we were, you could call it hybrid or mostly remote, even pre-COVID. And so we had offices. I think one of the big differences, I think you nailed it on the head. I think hybrid is if you have everybody geographically located in the same spot, which is there's some trade-offs, good and bad to that, right? So you can hire people around the world if you're comfortable with fully remote, but we have a concentration of people in Seattle, we have a concentration of people in Montreal, and some of those people choose to go into the office, not very often, but enough that it's worthwhile to have an office. And so what I noticed that I personally missed, to answer the question, so we started mostly remote as a startup. We eventually got offices. We'd go to the offices. It was probably only a year of the 12 years where everybody consistently went into the office. We were in a high growth stage, high number of people. We grew from maybe 7 to 50 people in a short period of time. And so everybody just wanted to be together.
Yeah.
And then we had a bunch of bad outcomes from the company. We had to pivot, lay off people. We ended up shrinking, got back down to 7 people, and ran into COVID. And at that time, I had never thought about not being in the same place as all my employees. There was eight of us, and most of us were in Seattle, but we went a whole year without seeing one another. And my wife really wanted to visit the son. So I'm like, well, we're going to just go Airbnb, travel around. And during that time, I started working with a company that was headquartered in Montreal and developed a strong relationship with them. And ultimately, we merged together. And I found that them being remote and us building a relationship over Zoom was not hindered. I mean, it does, to your point, it took some purposefulness. My wife and kids told me I talked more to Randy, who was the CEO of that company, than to them, right? So there was a lot of Zoom time.
Yeah.
And then we just started taking advantage of the remote ecosystem and hiring people all over the world, primarily in North America. And you can get some price advantages that way. But you can also you can always just get great talent, right? People who get paid fairly for where they live and really value what we're aiming for, which is a culture of collaboration, teamwork, relationships. And so we grew back from seven people pre-COVID to now 80 people. And it's, we have done a lot, which we can talk about in detail, to make it a great place to work. We make great places to work lists, but I never want to take it for granted that we're going to keep on those lists. So I kind of stay a little bit maniacally focused on what we can do to make sure we keep winning.
Yeah, well, no, that's great. And like you said, it's the intentionality piece. So regardless, you've gone through iterations. You've been primarily remote first. You moved to in office during a scaling period. You moved back to remote during COVID. You found, largely that has served you well, and that's great. And obviously, it depends on the business, right? It depends on what you do and what products and services you provide and what types of employees you need. But to your point, there's so many benefits from a diversity standpoint, from a labor cost standpoint, from just a talent acquisition standpoint, where we know so many of the types of jobs we need, we have shortages of people who have those skills. And so if you can tap into labor markets outside of your geographical area, oftentimes that can lead to all sorts of positive benefits if you can learn how to leverage it effectively within a remote or a hybrid environment. Your intentionality around, and I'm sure it's not about the list. Like, making the list is nice. That's a nice kind of byproduct of having a great place to work. But making the list only happens because you are intentionally committed to actually creating that great place to work, where you're actually doing things day in and day out to make a positive environment. And that's hard enough to do, I think, in a face-to-face workplace where you can have things like just office setup and signage, and you can have organic opportunities for interactions and collaborations and those sorts of things. In a remote environment, you have to be just super intentional about all of that, because people are just like sitting wherever. They might be on a beach somewhere, they might be in their home office, who knows? It doesn't really matter as long as they're doing the work. And so you have to just be very intentional about how people connect, how they understand the company's purpose, its vision, its mission, its culture, its values. That has to be communicated very deliberately and consistently. And all of that's hard enough to do in person. It's probably harder to do virtually, but it's not impossible. And that's the thing, when I hear people about hear CEOs making these back to work mandates, back to office mandates, maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's the right decision for their organization. I don't know. I don't know all the details, going into that decision for them. But if it really only comes down to their preference, they just prefer to have people together at work, or maybe they feel like, oh, we can't get that thriving company culture the way we want unless we're together in person. I say, let's be a little bit more creative than that. Like, I think there is a way to do both, or to have a spectrum, right? To have a range of how we connect in a hybrid environment. So why don't you tell us more about some of those things that you've been doing at Influence Mobile to create that thriving culture, even in a remote environment?
Sure. I think, to me, and many people have heard me say this, I think the absolute foundation of a successful culture is the relationships. This is not rocket science here, right? And so you have to, and this seems like the simplest part, but you have to care for the people you work with, right? We make a big part. I do most of the first interviews of the company because, again, I've said this in the past, it feels trite to just say, oh, we hire people we like. But hiring people that you like and getting along with people right out of the gate, and feeling comfortable that they're going to work well with everybody else, especially in a remote work environment, is super important. And what we found is, we obviously, I hired people that I knew had pre-existing relationships. I've hired people that I don't know and built relationships, but we constantly try to leverage those relationships as we grow. And so I would say we got a dev team of maybe 20 people. And I would say very close to half of those were referrals from the other half of the dev team, right? Because people come in, they like what they're seeing and what they're doing, and they tell their friends. And I've talked to other CEOs who they think that's risky, because they're like, well, then if person A gets unhappy, they brought in person B, they'll leave and bring person B with them. And I'm like, that's a really interesting, I've never considered the downside scenario. We haven't had somebody willingly leave our company in 6 years. And so I'm only looking at the upside. But I still think it all starts with those relationships, right? So when I have a strong relationship with, say, Megan, our VP of operations, she recommends an HR person who she's known for a long time. Me and that HR person now have a closer bond by proxy because of this other relationship, right? And so these web of relationships, I think, are what allow a good culture to continue to build, because it's hard, especially as we've gone from 7 to 80, for me to personally know every single person in the company. I can't know every single person as well as I did when we were 7 and 8 people. And that's one of the downsides, I think, of being remote. My favorite part of the week was, we called it Friday at 5, which was ironically at 4 p.m. We'd all leave early, go to the pub, have some appetizers, talk. And while it was like, 20, 30% work, what were the wins? It was 70% like, hey, how are the kids? What are you doing this weekend? It was getting to know people, enjoying their company. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking, like, how do you replicate that stuff? I actually think the work meetings, like saying like, hey, we got to do A, B, and C, go do A, B, and C, that can actually be more productive in a remote environment. But building those personal relationships and fostering those, I think, are the things we've been focusing on the most.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So what have been some of the biggest challenges that you've seen and faced as you're working within this kind of an environment?
Well, like I said, I would say one challenge, and I was just writing an article on this, is past workplace trauma from new employees, right? So I never really understood this. I have worked in places that weren't the best environment, but it was 25 years ago and it wasn't very long. So I've had the opportunity to have largely good experiences. And so when I started interviewing people for this topic, what I was very surprised to hear is, whether it was a good company culture or a bad company culture, they were all told during the interview process, this is a great place to work. It's an awesome company culture. So coming in, employees that have had past trauma, they don't care if you won awards, and they don't care about the articles you write. I mean, that it's interesting to them, gives them maybe a little bit more hope, but they care about this experience. And so we've had to identify a process to help people who have had past workplace trauma come in and understand that we treat them differently. And the way that they can see that is that we treat all the people who preceded them differently. And those people say, oh yeah, if you have an emergency in your family, they want you to take care of your family over the company, right? Like, and so that collective knowledge of how each person is treated is what starts to have people have confidence that the leadership, the managers, the coworkers care about them as people. And that is harder to do without personal relationships. So a few years ago, we started bringing everybody in the company together once a year. It was a very big success. I mean, I had worked with certain people for 4 years, never saw their face.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So then that started to lay a foundation, and we didn't come together to look at PowerPoint slides. There was obviously some work to be done, but we came together to build relationships. We went dune buggying and high caliber rifle shooting and Michael Jackson shows and museums, like times where you could just be together and hang out, like a concentrated Friday at 5 over 3 or 4 days. And it was a huge success. And so then really what we've been trying to perfect is, what is the frequency where you're not over inundating people with travel, but you keep that kind of like high of the relationship stuff going. So now we're aiming for 2. We're budgeting for every employee to be able to make 2 trips a year, one full company, one their team or some project. And there's a lot of money that goes into that. And so we're constantly making sure that we're assessing the value, making sure that the teams that are going understand what they're trying to accomplish from a work perspective, but also not minimize the fact that at least half the time should be spent building relationships. And that process has really borne amazing fruit in the relationship side, which then you see reflected in a good culture.
Yeah, and I really do. I agree. I believe that a positive company culture is built on relationships, and relationships are built on trust. And so when you're in person, well, let me step back for a second. We've all seen the internet effect. So like the Twitter wars and social media wars. And like when people are not together, sometimes we can be really nasty to each other because we're hiding behind a screen and we're not there in person with somebody face to face, human to human. And sometimes I guess it's just easier for us to like other people when we're not connected, and sometimes be really nasty, just unproductive, whatever, right? So that dynamic does exist. It's something to be concerned about and to be aware of if we have remote teams, because some of that, not a, it's different. You know, if people are talking about political stuff or whatever, that's different than working on a work project. But you know, it's possible some of that could seep in to your remote team if you're not careful. But regardless, it could happen in the workplace, in the face-to-face workplace, in physical proximity too. And
For
so
sure.
just remembering that it's really important to develop those relationships, and it's built upon trust. Like you said, when people have never been together ever, sometimes it's harder to build that trust. It's not impossible, but
Right.
sometimes it's harder to build it. So finding opportunities to have those face-to-face sessions to bring in, like you said, once a year, once a quarter, whatever makes sense for you, wherever your team happens to be. Obviously, there are expenses connected to that, right? So you have to think through it and think through the business case for it and the utility of it. But yeah, bringing people together to develop that trust, break down potentially those barriers that exist because you're not together in person, that can go a really long way to then developing the relationships. Because guess what? Everyone is going to have good days and bad days. Everyone is going to have disagreements, frustrations. Every project is going to have its ups and downs. You only weather that and get through that if people trust each other and you have good relationships with your colleagues, right? Otherwise, people start backbiting and undermining and, all sorts of unhealthy behaviors and other things, in terms of trying to be protective of your job, etc. So I just can't agree enough the importance of relationships in all of this, whether you're face to face, hybrid, remote, or whatever. As a leader, it starts with you. Do you do things that foster trust within your team? Or do you undermine that trust by your actions, your behaviors, the things you say? Are you consistent, with what your spouse values are, with what you're trying to accomplish? And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Nobody expects perfection. And when I have espoused values, and I have, things that I'm shooting for, I'm not always going to achieve it. People don't expect perfection, but what they do expect is consistent effort, and they expect honesty and integrity. So if you say you're trying to do something, you should be trying to do something. And if it doesn't work out, you should acknowledge that and say, hey, that didn't quite work the way we'd hoped. What can we do differently? How can we do it better next time? And have those open, transparent, even sometimes vulnerable dialogues with your team. That is what will foster trust. That's what will foster relationships. That's what's going to create that psychologically safe environment for people to really grow together and have that dynamic culture. So I love all those things that you're describing that you're trying to do, because I think each of those things, like you said, it's not rocket science. Nothing we've said here is rocket science, but it is hard. It is hard because it takes consistency. It takes intentionality. It when the rubber where the rubber meets the road, and when things get hard, it takes commitment to make sure that those things continue to happen. And that, while not rocket science, is really hard to do. And that's
Yeah.
why so many leaders fall short, and why so many organizations don't have the type of healthy culture that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to this belief, the belief of how important it is, right? And if you believe earnestly that a strong company culture is a competitive advantage in the workplace, then and it's the foundation for success, then you'll invest in it. If you don't see the benefit, and there are certainly companies who've had more of a command and control, stick model that have built financial success. But for me, I want to work at a place that I enjoy working, and so I want everybody else to equally enjoy it. So I value it very highly, and I spend at least as much time on the company culture and how people are being treated and how their personal development is going. as I do the actual business strategy itself, because I can't unlink them as success metrics for the business.
Well, this has just been a really great conversation, Daniel. I appreciate your insights, sharing more of your experiences. As we start to wrap up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Sure, thank you. So I do write for Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. You can find them on my LinkedIn profile, Daniel Todd, CEO of Influence Mobile. I also just recently launched my own podcast called The Remote Revolution that's focused exclusively on interviewing CEOs of best places to work companies and trying to understand what they do, what is their secret sauce. And it's definitely interesting to see everybody's got their thing that makes them unique and interesting, but they all kind of flow into the net result of the employees are engaged and happy. And it's my goal to continue to talk to smart people like you and them and just continue to learn. So I thank you for having me on your show. And I hope that other people will continue to listen to your podcast and maybe check out mine and hold employers accountable for creating good workplaces.
Yeah, I love that. Accountability. We should all expect it. Employers should expect it of their employees. Employees should expect it of their employers. So let's have mutual accountability and trust developed in our organizations. Daniel, this has just been a pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Daniel and his team can do for you. Check out his podcast. Check out all the great resources, all the articles that Daniel puts out. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.